Welcome to the Boring AI Show, the podcast for people who want to understand AI beyond the headlines. We talk about the useful, messy, funny, and very human side of bringing artificial intelligence into the real world. Now, here are your hosts, Tim and Tally.
All right, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Boring AI Show. Here with myself, Tim and Tally, with Mind Over Machines, ready to talk about all things Season 2 is the topic of today's episode, specifically focusing on AI trends. Are you excited,
Right.
Tim? Is this what we've been waiting for all day to discuss?
Actually, maybe it's a sign of how exciting my day is. But yes, actually, I've been.
There you go.
I went back through and reread the MIT article we're going to be talking about
Yeah.
today. Well, articles, and that was a fun rabbit hole to go down. Just kind of reading because each article links to another article, and so it's like, oh, let me check on that. Let me check on that. Oh, I remember reading that. So that was pretty fun this morning.
Agreed. Well, before we jump into the topic, I want to see, what has been top of mind for you lately? Any AI in the news you're watching or just Tim related news that you think would be pertinent for us to discuss today?
Yeah, I'm still again everything. I feel like my universe is swirling around the Towson event, which is next
Mhm.
week, which is our big governance event that we're doing with Towson University and the students. We have an upcoming episode about it. It'll be awesome. We'll share lots of good stuff, and I don't know, maybe do some interviews or chats while we're there. Who knows? We'll figure something out. But outside of that, there was an article that popped up on my LinkedIn feed today about OpenAI and the occurrence of words like goblin, gremlin, ogre, so these kind of folklore and fantasy creatures, and how that, how they came to be so common throughout the OpenAI algorithms. It was a really interesting article to read about unintended consequences of waiting in the algorithms. And so,
Hmm.
we always tell everybody, check your work, check what's coming out of the AI system. Because also part of like when you feed something back in to say, this was good, this is the kind of stuff I want, the system's going to weigh that, okay, that was good. And we want more like that. So just being mindful of, kind of that feedback loop was a great reminder this morning, hearing about goblins and gremlins with OpenAI. So,
Love it. Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, how the bias
Uh,
could swing that way.
yeah. How about you, Tally? What do you got going on?
Well, a couple things. Nothing major. Actually, there was a news article that did stand out to me lately, and it's just a small use case, but I just love the idea that students, especially both high school and college students, as AI is becoming more part of their curriculum, they're testing and experimenting AI in a variety of ways. And this one student, it was really interesting. He wanted to create an AI to help him with reading and digesting like contracts or terms and conditions. And I know myself, I don't always, I'll be honest here, read the full terms and conditions before I just select,
Oh,
move forward. And it's not a good habit. And I think, if we can use AI to even just help digest some of the key points there, I think that was just a really cool use case. And again, I just
yeah.
like students experimenting with AI in ways that are yeah, kind of interesting and allow for them to solve some of their real world problems, which is very cool.
So you don't read the like 200-page service agreements that are in the tiny, tiny windows?
I know, I
Yeah.
don't, and we should because obviously, we want to make sure we're understanding what we're agreeing to, and that's something we preach. But it is such a hard thing to do from a user experience
Yeah.
perspective.
Yes.
So I thought that was a really interesting use case.
Yeah. And that so uh, as you're going with that, that also reminds me of the video you and I were talking about earlier today, the on
Yes.
TikTok, the Calhoun effect.
Hmm.
Um, I had not. This was the first time I had encountered that, which I
Hmm.
just was really, really thought it was so cool. And for those who don't know, I'm not an expert in the Calhoun effect, but the how the TikTok video that was talking about it, but it was like clearly professionally done, clearly done from an academic perspective. It was talking about the Calhoun effect of If you give a utopian society to, in this case, rats, what happens if they have everything they need? Like, what does that do to them? And it was tracked over multiple generations, and basically, eventually, the rats just all died. And they all died. I don't tally did it. I don't remember if it said what they died of, other than just boredom.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you even framed it, and this is how he framed it as well in his experiment was, they gave them quote unquote everything they needed, but
Right.
clearly it wasn't everything they need. They gave them food and water, comfortable housing, spouses to mate with, the essentials to be physically healthy. But the conclusion following it, as I understood it, Tim, was that there was no roles or purpose
Right.
given to the rats because they didn't have to struggle or overcome something. Uh, they essentially became, I don't think they used the word depressed, but it was kind of how I interpreted it. And they lacked meaning in this quote unquote utopian space, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, agreed. And as we talk about like this was not framed up as an AI video, but as we talk about the shifting roles people have, and how critical that purpose and meaning and role in their community is, I think this is a perfect timing for, and maybe this is something, we go and find somebody to be a guest and talk more about this on, but it was a really cool video diving into like, what is, if you have your basic needs met, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have your
Exactly.
basic needs met, you do get to a place where you do have to, you're seeking out purpose. But
Hmm.
what I saw from here is like, it's not like, well, when you have time, find your purpose. No, it's like you need this to really survive. And so as we talk about AI's impact on tasks and jobs and the future of work, I really do see, and we've been talking about this for years, the critical nature of understanding what is your role in the business, not your job title, not your, function in the business, but like what is your role. It was really a very interesting video to start my day.
Yeah, I agree. And to that note, I mean, it reminds me of what we talk about too, not just role, but your core competency. So, what
Yeah.
is the skill that's uniquely yours that you really bring to an organization? A lot of times, I think we summarize what we do by our job title, but that's not necessarily the asset that we're bringing to an organization. So, really understanding it's that, like you just said, the hierarchy of needs, that self actualization of what is that. Yeah, that thing that's uniquely yours that you can bring to the table that AI is not going to replace, that gives you that meaning, and that might mean challenges, but that's part of growth. And obviously, as this um, experiment demonstrated, if things don't have that or they don't have that role or sense of purpose, especially humans, which are such complex creatures, it could get really challenging. And so I think it just further highlights the need for all of us to take some time to do some self-reflection on what our individual core competency is, our thing that makes us truly human and individual, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and I always, Tally, I always feel like whenever we bring this up in our upskilling sessions, like the room instantly goes silent when we're like, "So, what is your core competency? What's the magic you bring to your work?" And nobody wants to say anything. Like
Well,
everybody's like
yes,
quiet.
and what I have found interesting in a lot of workshops when we bring this up, a lot of folks don't know how to describe it for themselves, but they can describe it for their coworkers. So I remember there was
Yes.
one workshop we did where one of the attendees was like, "Oof, I don't know. I'm really good at, and then all of a sudden everybody jumped in and said, "What are you talking about? You're great at connecting these teams. You're great at making people feel safe and so if you're not sure, if you're listening to this and you're like, "What is my core competency?" Start by asking your network and your coworkers and your friends, and you'd be surprised to hear, how they might see your different skill sets, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and if you're worried about like, and because we did this as an exercise with a company I worked with years ago, we were given the homework of asking other people like, what will you say I'm good at? And a lot of people were really uncomfortable for it because they felt like it was fishing for compliments. Not They weren't
Mm,
uncomfortable with giving answers. They were uncomfortable asking for people's input. So
mhm.
if you're one of those people that's not going to want to ask this and get the input from other people, here's a quick trick for you. If you go and get one of those like values lists You know what I'm talking about? Like all those words that are like creativity and
Yes.
punctual and detail oriented. If you just go find a values list and you give it to somebody and say, can you circle 5 of these that you think represent me?
I like
That's
that.
that's a great way to kind of get to the same conversation or start the conversation. And when they give you that list back of here's 5, ask them, do you have examples of this? And that helps start the conversation to get to, so what do you think, what do you what do you when you think about work, what do you think I'm good at? Like
Yes.
without saying those words. So,
Yes. No, I like that. Articulating, yeah, strengths in that way and using a pre-existing framework to do that. I love that.
yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, do you want to talk about talking about strengths, predicting the future? That's a
Let's
pretty cool
do
strength.
it. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if I have that skill, but I can give it a shot. And I think I'm really curious to hear not only our discussion today. We're going to go through and talk about some of MIT's AI predictions for the things that really matter right now. But I'd love to hear before we jump into that, what your thoughts are, Tim, around where do you think like your top three, top two, predictions in terms of the areas within the AI field to really keep an eye on that we think are going to progress this year.
Yeah, number one, I don't feel like I get any credit for being a futurist or a soothsayer for this one, but I think we're going to see a lot of AI investment in projects be seen as failed investments. So companies who
Mm,
have tried to launch AI initiatives or tried to launch programs and they've spent lots and lots and lots of money on these things and they're like, yeah, nothing happened. Now, what we'll also find as we dig into that is there probably wasn't a lot of metrics that are around success. There probably wasn't a really clear use case. And we see this a lot with, organizations that just kind of scattershot Copilot licenses. Copilot's a really powerful, Microsoft Copilot, very powerful tool, very useful tool. The challenge comes in is when it's just shot out by email of now you have Copilot and there's no real follow up of so what? Like, what do you do with it? And where's its value come in? And how does it actually integrate with the work that you're doing? And this is where I think we're going to see, and I'm using Copilot as the example there just because we've encountered it so many times, but we've also encountered where people have done very large investment projects that nobody wants to use that are not delivering results or aren't delivering the value that's expected. So I think that's going to be 2026 is going to be the
mm.
year of AI disillusionment in the enterprise for projects that have been started and going that didn't get the care and feeding they needed around transformation and change management.
I think that's
So,
really interesting. And I love that you use the term metrics that matter. And for those
mhm.
listening who don't know what that means, that's a term that we use here at Mind Over Machines to talk about, measuring success in a really purposeful way. And a lot of times we see organizations, I mean, what was it, just a couple weeks ago, Tim, we saw an organization say, before they were measuring this AI tool they had invested in based on just time savings, but it actually cost them more time because people had more questions around the documents they were reviewing, which then created better quality outputs and mitigated potential risks down the road, which could have cost the company. So while maybe it didn't save time, which was their initial metric, there were other metrics that it really improved. And so making sure we are implementing these tools, like you said, not just focusing on maybe one metric or two, but really seeing the holistic picture of why you might be getting a certain metric and what the other results are of that solution. So I thought that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know, this might predate you here at Mind Over Machines, Tally, but Metrics That Matter was actually rooted in a book that was about OKR development. And I can't remember if that was like when you were brand new or just ahead of when you were here when we started talking about that.
Mm.
But there was a book, and I was just trying to look it up. So if you heard me clicking on my computer, sorry for the background noise. But I was trying to look up the book, and I'm sure we'll hear about it in the comments, which reminds me, like and subscribe, leave comments, let us know what you think. But we'll post the book that I'm thinking of. It's like a super like popular, tons of people have read it book. Like there's been major studies around around it. Like the fact I can't remember it off the top of my head is not a good sign. That's where it digs into how do you define these metrics? Why do they matter? And what is the actual signal they're showing by measuring these things? Like what's the change that's actually occurring? It's around the OKR framework, objective key result, which is what a lot of companies use
Yeah.
for goal setting.
Yes. Very cool.
So, what about you, Talia? What's one of your predictions this year before we? I have more, but let's go back and forth.
I have more as well, but I think my top one is more industry specific AI models. So I think
Hmm.
2025 and even early 2026, we're seeing a lot of organizations have AI policies and allow their workforce to use general, large language models like a ChatGPT or Copilot. But I think as folks start using this, they're going to realize that, and I think we're already starting to see that, there's a need for more AI specific models or agents that do not only tasks specific to an organization or industry, but also specific to a department and role. And so really getting more granular with their AI tools that specialize in a certain area. I think we're really going to see the funnel now of, now that AI is seemingly everywhere, starting to be more generally adopted, getting more specific with those AI tools. I think that's going to be a large trend that we're going to see.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And as I think about skills in Claude and now in ChatGPT, as I think about custom GPTs and agents and copilots and the ability to build out these customized and the open source mindset of a lot of people of here's the instructions that are working for me. I'll just publish them on GitHub and anybody can grab them. I think we're going to see a lot of that, like, kind of sub niches show up of like, yeah, this is finance, but specifically it's government procurement finance skills,
Yes.
or and a skill is basically pre-written instructions, and sometimes it could be code assets or documents or templates. It's things that you can reference with your AI agents to know how to do something. So if like in Claude, there's a skill for how to interact with PowerPoint documents. And so you invoke the PowerPoint skill and Claude can interact with PowerPoint documents. So I agree with you. I think these skill environments are going to show up. What I'd be really curious to see is like project management is a great example because you have institutions like the PMI, the Project Management Institute. I wouldn't be surprised if they started selling skill packs to augment their PMP certification type activities.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Mhm.
So, and PMP or PMI, if you do that, don't forget, idea came from here. You can send us. I'm sure we'll have some way to fund us here. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Very cool. Any other trends or predictions you have from your end?
yeah, I definitely, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit with the MIT area. I
Mhm.
definitely think we're going to see much more cultural backlash. And with AI in general, there's, the concern about jobs, there's the concern about the environment, there's the concern about, our tech companies getting too much information about everything. And these are all valid concerns. But one thing that we've been talking about for years, and I think it's hitting the general populace now, is that, and will do more so as we go forward. AI is really challenging. What does it mean to be human, and what is the value of human work, and you know, what does it mean to be human, a human product?
Mhm.
I think we will see that significantly increase in the creator space, like the author space, the artist space. We're already starting to see like certified human certifications, and a lot of reliance, unfortunately, on AI checkers. Was AI used in this?
Mhm.
AI checkers in general are not very accurate. I've
Mhm.
seen very very good studies about how poor their performance is and how they really shouldn't be used as judgment systems. Again, and just in general, I don't know about every AI checker system. I'm not speaking about every AI checker system, just the ones that I've had experience with. But I do think companies like Adobe are doing interesting things with the anytime Firefly or Photoshop is using their AI capabilities. They're embedding markers into the file so that you have that read. Can you get around it? Sure. But again, if we're using the systems how we're supposed to be using them, then we're putting in the effort to be keeping everybody honest. You'll always have bad actors who circumvent things. It's just,
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Actually, one of my other predictions was how, in my mind, AI regulation is going to really become real. And what I mean, or tangible. And what I mean by this is not necessarily, it's going to depend on the administration and different things like that, if there's going to be a federal AI regulation, but there's going to be a real cost if organizations don't think through risk. And I was initially thinking about this, of course, monetarily, there's going to be a cost, or legally cost, if you don't comply to certain regulations when using AI tools. But I think you bring up a really interesting cost as well, and that's the cost of the culture, and
right.
potentially losing certain types of people or employees from your workforce if they don't feel, like they're that, when you implement an AI tool, it aligns with the value of the organization. And so really thinking about, when we are implementing tools, are we empowering the workforce and the clients of different organizations, or are we, putting them at risk and devaluing them, which could have larger costs down the road? So I think that's a really interesting point.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, if you are creating a culture where using AI, where were we? Where somebody was a call I was on with a client where they were talking about that there was a concern with being seen as using the AI tools, that they were, shortcutting work, or they didn't want people to know that these employees didn't want people to know they were using AI tools, because they thought it would negatively reflect on them, on the work they were doing. And again, in the creator community, we do see this behavior absolutely is occurring. In the professional community, there's a lot of studies that show different populations, based on gender, based on race, and how they approach AI or don't, and why. And so, to your point as well, it's the double-edged sword. We have where there's things we want people using AI for. There's things we don't culturally. We don't want people using AI for, because it's just not a good fit for the culture of the organization. And then you have the internal pressures for people of should I or shouldn't I, and how will I be perceived if I do? How will I be perceived if I don't? Lots of tensions there.
It's so interesting. And it will really also just depend, on each organization and their unique company values and culture. Yeah,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah. So you want to dive into MIT and talk about? I feel like our predictions were not like sunshiny rainbows. Like everything's going to be fine. Like that's not where we were at. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there was an interesting blend of items out there, and I'm excited to talk through them. I guess before we jump in, was there any one in particular that jumped out to you? And we can kind of go through each of the this article listed 10 AI things that really matter right now. And so it is we're recording this on May 1st, 2026, but I think this article came out in April of 2026. So just to level set where we're at,
yeah,
timeline wise.
and we'll drop it in show notes. Like you'll be
Mm-hmm.
able to get the link in the show notes.
Yes.
And I think it's a Tally, correct me if I'm wrong. Do we need a subscription to see the main article? I think we need a subscription to see the detailed
The
articles.
sub articles. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. So, one that stuck out to me with this, and I have it open here and scrolling through it. I thought there's a bunch that I just was really, really, really interested in. One, at the resistance piece, I find fascinating, and I don't want to. I don't want to say we called that, but years ago we started talking about like there's going to be a backlash and people are going to be tired of hearing about AI. Now it's gone further than just being tired of hearing about AI. Like we have, active protests there. But I think the agent orchestration, calling that out, and I loved how it was framed in the article around like this is the assembly line moment. The Henry Ford assembly line,
Yes.
it's transformed, in the second industrial revolution, and here agent orchestration is the equivalent for the AI, workforce. I thought that was really, really cool.
Do you want to break down to the audience what agent orchestration is so we could kind of
Yes.
understand how that, there we go.
So AI agents are basically, AI systems that can perform tasks on their own. You give them instructions, you give them sets of permissions. So you can say, you can do this, but not that. Make sure you are restrictive with your permissions and always comply with your organization's AI policies. Don't go rogue. Or as we call them, the AI cowboys. Don't be an AI cowboy. Don't go rogue. Stick
It
to your
does sound cool
policies.
though.
So an AI agent can perform tasks on your behalf based on instructions you provide. A great example of this would be like Claude Cowork. You have a task, you give it, it has certain tools that it can do to use to perform that task. So whether they're skills like the PowerPoint skill that I said earlier, maybe one of the things I'd ask my agent is go do this research and then write out a Word document and build out a PowerPoint presentation that I can share with my team. That's a good use of an agent that would go do these things. Agent orchestration is, well, that's probably not one agent doing all that stuff. There was one agent I asked to do it, but there was probably an agent that got fired up by Claude Cowork to go work with the PowerPoint stuff, a separate agent that was set up to go work with Microsoft Document or Microsoft Word, a separate agent to go do the research. So agent orchestration is, how do you keep all those agents focused, working on the same task to achieve the stated and standard outcome? And so this is a way that you can have lots of different agents doing lots of different things to one intended goal, which is,
Yeah.
again, going back to, that's an assembly line.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's really interesting. And I think one of the examples they used in as an agent orchestration was Google's DeepMind's co-scientists. So
mhm.
helping researchers do things like coordinating literature research and generating and testing hypotheses and designing experiments. So it's almost like instead of just one assistant, you have almost a whole team to help you achieve an end goal. And that actually feeds into another trend that they have, not just generalized agent orchestration, but just the rise of artificial scientists specifically, which I thought was
Yeah,
really interesting.
yeah, agreed. What was the thing that got you on that one?
On the AI, the artificial scientists,
Yeah, the artificial scientist. Sorry,
that
yeah.
one I thought was interesting because obviously, I find science really interesting. And I think, as humans, it's in our nature to be curious and want to problem solve. And so at first, it sounds great. Let's have these tools to help us advance scientific research. But I like they called out one thing to be wary of. And again, I think a lot of these trends showed there's really great positive potential, and also we need to be really strategic with thinking through the macro impacts of different AI solutions. So in this case, AI tends to do really well with problems when they have large, mass amount of data sets that they can sift through and try to find patterns across. And so the fear is, as scientists become more reliant on AI tools, they might lean towards problems that have that have those mass amounts of data sets. So then there's a bias in what scientists are choosing to investigate, and then that might cause the risk of not looking into certain problems that need research done on them because they might not be amenable to AI. So I thought
Yeah.
that was a really interesting call out.
So just audience, like Tally and I barely outline what we're going to talk about in these things and on each episode. And so this, I just think this is really fascinating. So Tally, like what you were just describing, I didn't put this together when I read the artificial scientist article, but it connects
Mm.
right back to the goblin and
Mm.
folklore creatures. All right, like
Mhm.
you unintentionally incentivize information in the model, which leads to
Mhm.
behaviors in the model. And so I think that's a great call out and a kudos to you for looping it back. I'm sure fully intentionally uh,
Right.
back to goblin mode in our earlier discussion.
But I think that is a theme. Be aware of unintended consequences, not only from AI,
Absolutely.
but also how that maybe impacts human behavior, intentionally or unintentionally. So just being really strategic with, yeah, the strategy behind an AI solution before moving forward with building and using it.
Yeah, which I will segue into my next one on
Sure.
this list that I thought was really interesting, was China's open source bet, where
Yeah.
it a lot of focus, with DeepSeek. For those who remember DeepSeek coming out, making a big splash, and the energy, the question of energy efficiency and how it was different. There's other questions of, did it distill information from other AI models to train? Is it actually as efficient to train as it was stated to be? But what's good, and I really appreciate in this article, is the discussion around the inversion of how AI models are done, by large tech companies like Anthropic and OpenAI, where it's kind of the
Hmm.
the model is kept behind the API, and this open source model is no, here's the model. Like you can do whatever you want to do with the model. Now there are restrictions. There are, as the article calls out, there's things pre-built into some of these Chinese models that would not align with values for a lot of companies or United States, and so there's problems there. But the idea of the open source models and what's been going on in the open source AI community is really something to watch, and
Yeah.
from a cybersecurity perspective, something to be very mindful of, as people are going to start. Well, I want to run my own AI model, or I'm using this AI model, as through this company, and it turns out it's really just running DeepSeek, or it's running Quen, or it's running one of
Hmm.
these other models underneath the covers of it. So
Yeah.
being really mindful of what's coming into your environment and really making sure that vendors are clearly articulating to you what models are being used, how is it tested, how's it red teamed.
Hmm.
Red teaming is the effort to break the model intentionally to see where its limits are, so that this is a safe model, it's been vetted.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, proprietary versus open source. And you bring up a good point too of, really making sure we're thinking about who are the people behind, who are the people creating these tools. And so, of course, we all have inherent biases, and sometimes that can be beneficial and sometimes it's not. And so recognizing that we're going to be biased usually towards the culture that we're in. And so, AI solution built in China versus US are going to have really different cultural differences, and also the different tools even built within within one nation, can have really different feels to them. I mean, if you look at like Grok versus
Hmm.
ChatGPT versus, and thinking about the people who are actually building them. And I know something
Yep.
we really promote too when building different agents or AI solutions for your organization, co-creating with the end user and making sure that we're thinking through all of the different perspectives needed to get the proper output. And sometimes that means having it purposely biasful, towards maybe a certain industry or a certain state's legislation, for example. But sometimes those aren't intentional biases. So really thinking through those, I think that highlights that well.
Yeah, and what you were describing made me think of somebody we work with who describes Anthropic as the buttoned up professional that keeps it all together and is like always like ready to do the right thing. And then Grok is the other one, like Grok is the other side of that coin.
Right.
It's kind of
Right.
like, let's just do, whatever I feel like at the moment. We'll just do it. Like,
Much looser. Right.
yeah, much looser. That's a very nice way to put that, Sally. So, but yeah, and again, cultural differences.
Yes.
Which one's right for you depends on your use case, depends on your culture and values, especially when it comes to a business environment. So,
Yeah, agreed, agreed. And I think honestly, that brings us to one of the other points they listed around world models. And
oh yeah,
so, again, I think what we're talking about here, but we haven't said the word yet, is context engineering. And so, understanding what is the context, the culture of a certain user group or of the builders of a nation, or is the context, the actual world they're in. And I thought that, world models, quote unquote, are just really interesting way to try to increase or make sure that the AI solution has a better context of the world in order to get better outputs, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, and I mean we have passively been talking about world models for a while. They really came kind of big deal with AI video aspects where there was a lot of energy around that. I I thought we would have seen much more energy with world models around like Unreal Engine and Unity 3D, and
Mm.
as they were in their early AI days. But it is fascinating to see what some of the research labs are doing, and some of the the researchers that are working on building out these world models. And actually, let me go so I get the right name, and we can edit this so that it's not so crazy or not, whatever. Um, and I don't, like, I'm like, I wanted to make sure, confirm that I got Fei Fei Li's name correct with World Labs. I've played with World Labs a little bit. It's super, super cool stuff. Um,
I
you
have
know,
not. What's the experience?
it's tough to describe. Yeah, as you go into like working with in 3D elements and video, and
Mm.
but I would encourage people, like, go look at these world model things. They're pretty interesting. NVIDIA has a really good tutorial series talking about world models and their Omniverse platform, and how they're really focused on world models for robotics and creating a standardized world model to be able to tie into. So it's pretty neat stuff. It's a whole different animal than what you do in large language models, and you know I do see this being a shift when we talk about AI's capabilities. We're getting out of text and
Mm.
video and images, and now we're getting into the actual interactions of forces of nature, and how you actually interact in the world versus here's how somebody described it on Reddit. You know,
Mm. Yes.
Pretty powerful stuff. I do think world models are something to watch. I don't know if we're gonna. I think in 2026, I think we'll see progress with them. I don't know that your um, frontier industries will start experimenting with them this year, but that'll be something we'll be watching. And if we see it, we'll share it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And then one of the other topics that really stood out to me just personally actually was and I know this is going to be a little controversial, but the humanoid data
Uh huh.
around how to make, using AI and putting sensors on a body to help AI learn different ways that humans move and track and replicate human motion for certain tasks. And I know that can raise flags for some folks. For me, my mind immediately went to the robot from the Jetsons. But I really love this idea because I have friends and family members with differing physical abilities due to just different health impacts. And so I'm thinking about the ways in which, some of the outcomes of this humanoid data could benefit those people to help them maybe lift heavy objects or, do something as delicate as like picking a peach from a tree, which is a very actually complicated, thing that requires a lot of like sensitive touch input. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting, and I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, I don't know. I encountered an article about this, I think, on MIT Tech Review a while back, and it. So there was a really good book called Ghost Work, is the title, and I've mentioned
Mm.
this in other multiple seminars this week that I've done.
Hmm.
But it talks about basically the invisible people who are building the data that's being used to train AI algorithms to be effective. And this, this humanoid data that they're talking about, it's another example of ghost work. We have these people who are being paid to, put, a bag of popcorn in the microwave and stand there and wait for the bag of popcorn to, pop, and then take the bag of popcorn out. And they're recording, like they record themselves doing these activities. And so and they're paid, whatever. It's not a lot of money to do these activities, and it's per activity. It outlines it in the article. And we're seeing this in global South, that this type of activities are happening. And so again, as we think about these type of tasks, there is an economic impact, not a positive one, on creating this kind of work. And so I do recommend everybody read Ghost Work to dig into, what is happening here, as well as recognizing, Tally, I think you hit nail on the head of this, of differing abilities, of, well, who's doing, like, what's the training data here? What are we doing with this data, and how's it getting captured? The other piece is, if you haven't, anybody who hasn't caught up on like the Roomba video leak, issues, or the how Roomba was sending videos of the people who owned Roombas to contractors for review, there's a lot of privacy concerns that come up with this. So I find it really fascinating though, because like I was talking about Unity 3D and Unreal Engine, and one of their early use cases was to create simulated data. You'd create simulated worlds. You'd have robots interacting in those worlds, and that would create the training data. And this is kind of leaping into, well, let's just video people doing these tasks for real. And then recently there was an article about Meta and their work, like you being tracked what you're doing at work, so that you can use that to they can use that to train AI agents. So this gets really messy really quickly. And, the key things I think here are, it's interesting, it could be useful. Don't forget privacy and consent, as we keep an eye on this going forward. And I feel like the article, maybe the article also leans me towards that privacy and consent are not always considered.
Yes.
As
No, I think you bring up really great points. And I think that loops us back to where we started of that point that you mentioned at the beginning of resistance, and why so many people are this might be why so many people are resisting AI. And when I was going through this, I was taking some notes, and I did a huge star next to AI ethics wheel, which is Mind Over Machines approach to how we could analyze if a solution would be ethically appropriate for an organization. But I think not only on a micro level and an organization use case level, we should consider these elements of the ethics wheel, one of which, as Tim just mentioned, is privacy. But at a macro scale, really making sure we're thinking about, who are these solutions impacting? If there's a community that lives near one of these data centers and that's, impacting their health, how do we see, how do we go through at a macro level and ethically think about, the ways to implement AI, so that way we can benefit somewhat equally, as opposed to having these large disparities. I would love to say 100% equal, but I know that's not always, there's always trade-offs. And so understanding what those trade-offs are, and being really intentional with how we're going about implementing these solutions.
Yeah, we always tell people, if somebody comes to you and says, I have a system with no bias, and it's just laugh in their face, because there's no way that's true. So anything else about MIT's top 10, Tally, or you want to move on to the next? We're kind of running long on this episode.
I know. No, I think we hit the main ones. There's a few other topics we didn't discuss, but I would highly encourage that the audience read this article. We'll make sure to attach it in the show notes. And if there's any other topics within this that we didn't hit today that you'd like us to do another episode on, please let us know. But I think we hit the main ones that at least stuck out for me personally.
Yeah, I think the only one we didn't talk more thoroughly about, but we kind of hit in the beginning, is the resistance piece. And I think of all of the predictions and things to watch on here, I think this is the one that could have the most impact. And I don't just mean like regulatory wise. I mean like cultural movement wise. I think there's a lot that is layered in here. And I do see AI being a easy target for frustration, all kinds of just general frustrations about all kinds of things happening in the world. So this could be the cultural nexus that people just gather around to be like, we're angry about this, but also a whole bunch of other stuff. But this is the thing we're going to take it out on.
Yes.
And again, resistance is not a bad thing. It is actually a very healthy thing when we're having a cultural transformation moment. It's just, everybody be responsible, don't be violent, all that good stuff.
Agreed.
Disclaimers. So,
Exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Well, as we wrap up here, I'd love to end on just an AI either win or use case you've heard of recently, Tim, or that you've used, in the past week for the audience to get an idea from.
yeah. So a few years back, there was a really good book. I think it was like last year or the year before. It was called Teaching with AI. And I really need to like look up the authors, and I apologize. As an author myself, I'm like, yeah, sorry, authors. Like, I don't remember, but it was a really good book, Teaching with AI. And they talk about how in that book, AI is like the C-level work. If you can produce it with AI, it's C-level work. And so as we're getting ready for this Towson competition, I was curious as to what Claude Cowork would come up with as the solution to the problem that we've provided for the Towson students. Just to get myself a baseline of if a student just said, hey, AI, fix this for me, what would they get? And the results were really interesting. So I loaded in the problem set that we provided. It's all the documents we gave to the students. So the problem set, the presentation about the event, and then the scoring rubric. And what came out of the system was pretty good and well written, very interesting, very informative, but did have some misses that were pretty significant, in that it was really leaning way too heavily on paperwork-based governance agreements and didn't really talk about the technical security that you could put in place, which again, this is a liberal arts activity, but if you're using your AI tools should know AI tools can help with this kind of stuff. So it was a really interesting exercise that I plan on sharing with the professors and students after the event. I don't want to stress them out with this kind of stuff going into the event. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very
how
cool.
about you, Tally?
So I have a lot of weddings coming up, just a lot of friends, and my sister's actually getting married, which I'm super excited for. But there's so much that goes into wedding planning
Yeah.
that I just personally didn't even realize. And especially if you can't afford, full-time wedding planner, a lot of my friends have been using AI in interesting ways to help them not only plan, but like ideate how to, like really creative ways to add just some personal elements to their wedding table designs and things like that, and even using AI to help try on some like late night wedding dresses, so that way, because one of them there was a rip and they're short on time, and so to help them try on wedding dresses visually, it was really interesting. So that's just been a really cool way to hear about AI, to help you if you don't have that level of expertise. So if anybody in the audience wants to learn more about how AI can help you in the world of weddings, feel free to reach out, because it's been really interesting for me to learn.
Tally, I think you have a niche market there.
Right?
That's, and this is, I think I really do. And this is talking about skills, like building a skills library around like wedding planning.
Yes.
Absolutely could see. But
Yes.
this is an area where I'm curious to see, going back to, for those who've been longtime listeners, you've heard us talk about the ice harvesters, I'm sure, where back in the day, we had people who would go out on the, Hudson River and chop up ice out of the Hudson River, harvesting ice to take back. And then we had refrigeration come around and we could ship ice all over the world, and you didn't need people going out and chipping it out of the river anymore. That's the evolution of business. In this world of AI, like I'm thinking about, I don't even know if they're still around, but like the Knot, that was a big thing when I got married many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The Knot, the community. This is
Mm-hmm.
a great leap for them to say, yeah, hey, we got the AI skills, plug these into ChatGPT and
Yeah.
keep us involved. Like,
Love that.
could be pretty cool. So,
Again, the knot, if you want to learn more, we're
yeah,
happy to help.
you just leave a comment, like and
Right.
subscribe, leave a comment. We'll reach out and help you with that. So,
Very cool. Well, I think we
uh,
covered a lot of information here, so definitely reach out if there's any more follow-up questions. But yeah, I had really fun. I think this was a really cool conversation we had today, Tim.
yeah, I agree. This is awesome stuff. And, People, if you have questions, like seriously, drop a comment. If you have a topic you'd like us to dig into, we are keeping this pretty loose. So we're not like building out a giant, some of our team members have built out a very nice social calendar of like what we're sharing and, all that stuff. But Tally and I have kind of decided to keep this loose. We don't always have like what the next episode is going to be about or the next episode. And so you got ideas, let us hear it. Drop a comment, and we'd love to talk about what you want us talking about.
Yeah, especially as things are changing. We hope to stay up to date with the latest topics, so definitely reach out.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, Tally. Great chatting with you today.
Thanks, Tim. See you guys next week.
See y'all later.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on The Boring AI Show. Practical AI minus the hype. Subscribe, share it with someone on their own AI journey,